I run out of space on my phone while I was telling the story of the nuns that I remember from when I was in school, and in particular of Sister Loretta McAndrews. So I'm going to finish it now. I should have about 10 minutes on the phone here. That'll be more than enough time to finish it. Sister Loretta McAndrews, she was our principal, just for those who haven't seen the first part of this, at school. She was a member of the Sisters of Providence, which was an order of nuns that were, I think it was a big order of nuns in Eastern Ontario, Canada. And I don't really know where else they were, but anyway, she was part of that order. They were based in they are based in Kingston, Ontario, at a place called Heathfield, which is what they call their mother house. It's their headquarters or whatever. It's a big place. I've been there a few times. I was there because I have an aunt who's a nun. She's now retired, but she's still a nun, but she's a retired nun. Sister Loretta McAndrews was our principal when I started school in 1973, and she was our principal through to 1977, at which time she went to do missionary work in Guatemala. Now, the situation in Guatemala was such that if a child was orphaned or found himself turned out onto the street or whatever it was, if they had no parental care, there really wasn't a system in place to help those children. And so they'd end up on the streets begging, sleeping wherever they could and begging and so on. And that meant that they were a hindrance to commerce. And so what was happening is the police in Guatemala, in the cities, they'd go out at night and they'd find these children and they'd murder them. So, the police were actually murdering orphans in Guatemala in the 1970s. That was a real thing that was happening. And the Sisters of Providence, they established a kind of a safe house for these children, to keep them from falling into the hands of the police and to see that they were fed and that they would get some kind of education and stuff like that, all of which they'd never get on the street, And also, like I say, their lives were in danger if they were on the streets, because they'd be murdered, probably by the police. The police murdered a lot of them. So the Sisters of Providence used to go out at night. They had a vehicle, and they'd go out at night, and they'd round as many of these children up as they could, and they'd take them back, and they'd give them beds in the shelter, and then they'd be safe there. They'd wake up alive the next day, basically, which on the street there was a good chance they wouldn't. And Sister Loretta McAndrews went down there to be a part of that, to help these poor children who were, really at risk of being killed, and who had a terrible hard life, a life most people here can't even imagine. So that's what she did. She wasn't down there very long before she took sick. It turns out she had cancer, and back then cancer was pretty well always terminal. Very, very seldom anybody survived cancer, and in her case it was definitely terminal. She basically came home to die. I saw her once in 1978. There was a function at the school that I went to. It was on a Saturday, and I went to it, and she was there, and I remember I had a chat with her. I was 10 years old, and I had a chat with my old principal, Sister Loretta McAndrews, and that was the last I ever saw of her. I got word sometime after that, not too long after that she had passed away from the cancer. I remember when I saw her, she didn't look good. She was very sickly looking, and she had lost a lot of weight. And so she had been kind of a plump woman, so it was noticeable that she lost this weight, because she was kind of a heavy-set woman. She wasn't fat, but she wasn't thin either, And so when a person like that loses weight, you notice it. And I noticed she was losing weight, and I knew she was dying. We'd been told that. We knew she wasn't going to live. And Anyway, I had a last kind of a chat with her anyway, and that was kind of nice. I remember that really fondly anyway, because she was a person that I had a lot of respect for, and that I genuinely liked. So anyway, that was that. But yeah, these were some of the people that I knew when I was growing up that made an impression on me, and that one way or another helped me to become who I needed to be. And I'm still working on it, really. I guess we're all working on it every day of our lives. We're never really who we need to be. But I think I'm closer to being who I need to be today because I knew those people, so I'm appreciative of that. And even Sister Bernice, who scared the hell out of me more than once, even her, even she helped me to get a better understanding of how people are and of how I am too. So, as an individual, so like I say, I'm thankful for having known each one of them. And just like anybody we know in this life, everybody fulfills a role of one type or another. And even the people maybe who you end up in conflict with, even they teach you something. In some cases, the people you end up in conflict with teach you the most. And I can honestly say most of my dealings with these people were good. I can't say very much against any of them, and there are some of them I can't say anything against. So anyway, like I say, I'm grateful to have known these people. These were people who taught us in school. They were people who worked. Basically, just the only payment they got was a little bit of money every month for toiletries, which they had to have, obviously. Human beings have to have certain things, and they got a little stipend, which didn't amount to much, just to pay for the basics, their soap and their toothpaste and other things like that. But, personal hygiene items. Otherwise, they were working for room and board. And they were doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, really. They were doing it because they wanted to help to mold the next generation. They wanted to teach us. They wanted to have an influence over us in a positive way, and I think for the most part they did. At least in my school they did. I'm not going to say that was the case everywhere. And I'm not going to say it was always perfect, because it wasn't. But generally speaking, they had a positive influence over us. And, like I say, some of them really did. I can tell you, Sister Marguerite O'Neill, how gentle she was, and in the face of often of adversity in many cases. Sister Loretta McAndrews, how she went to Guatemala and put her own self at risk, and she wasn't there long because she took sick, but she put herself at risk to help others, and that's a huge thing. Not everybody has it in them to do that. And just the fact that she always treated us with such grace and dignity, and she listened to us, and she was kind to us. And she didn't have to be. Not in that era. So like I say, I'm appreciative of them all. And Sister Bernice Boyle, even though she was harsh and she could be hard to deal with, I know her story, a little bit of it at least, and I have an understanding of people now that I wouldn't have otherwise. And so she taught me a great deal too, just by being who she was. So yeah, and that's true of a lot of people in this world that I've dealt with. Even when the interaction wasn't the greatest at the time, I can look back on it and say I learned something from it. Either about the world, or about myself, or about human nature, or something. I learned something from every interaction. And I hope you all do too. And if you don't, well, you need to. So there you go. Anyway, I'm going to close this off now. I just wanted to tell those stories. Again, whenever I leave this world, those stories will leave with me if I don't do this. So this is what I'm doing. I should mention that it's the 34th anniversary, I believe, of my dad's passing. He passed in 1988. So rest in peace to my dad, Tom Fournier, Sr. He died at 51 years of age. I'm now 54. So rest in peace to my dad. Talk later.